Hi, my name is Sarah DeMelizare, and I'm the project coordinator for BCRC's Where They Stood project.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ayana Manuma. I am the youth animator on the BCRC book project. I want to first welcome everyone to our live streaming of Where They Are Now. The purpose of this streaming is to update everyone on the progress of our project. As you know, we have enlisted 10 English-speaking Black youth to get on a journey to authorship. So through the process, we've gotten to know our youth very, very well. And we'd love for you to also get an idea of who they are and what they're writing.
We'd also like to extend a thank you to everybody who's helped us out along the way, whether it be the professors that we worked with, the professionals that led workshops or allowed us into their organizations, all of the BCRC staff, in particular, Rayanne and Dr. Bain, our editing team, including Dr. Bain, Yvonne Sam, and Dr. Dorothy Wills. We'd like also to extend a special thank you to everybody who has truly gone above and beyond for us and supported us throughout this journey. Like to extend a thank you to Linda Leaf Publishing, Dina Smith, and Alexandra Mills from Concordia University Archives.
I'd like to give a special shout out to Victoria, who's one of our youth on the project, but who has also pieced this entire film together. A special shout out to Ode as well, who has helped in the process. Also like to give a very special shout out to Mitchell McLarnon, for all the help that you've provided us along the entire project, as well as Desiree. Thank you so much for meeting with us repeatedly. And Dave McKenzie, you went above and beyond for our project as well and for our youth. We really appreciate the mentorship that you have allotted us. So all that being said, I hope that you enjoy this film. Yeah, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so much.
Where They Stood reflects upon the unique experiences of Montreal's Black Anglophone migrants who immigrated on the promises of freedom, independence, and prosperity. Consequently, organizations such as the Colored Women's Club and the Union United Church were created to combat this hostility. Where They Stood, not so long ago, has allowed us to evolve and stand where we are today.
Sorry. Y'all staring at me? No, y'all good. Okay. My name is Matthew Malone, and I'm doing chapter 1. We stand tall where we are, a community that defies borders. The stories of Black women in Canada are filled with knowledge and wisdom that can eliminate many of the voids in Canadian history. They provided community services that engaged in the advocacy, expanded employment, and helped with the education of youth. The Colored Women's Club was an organization started by the wives of porters in Little Burgundy. In 1902, they began to contest the persistent structural inequality and racialized colonial hierarchy. Prior to my research, I did not know Montreal had such a rich Black history. I honestly thought there was no Black people in Montreal until I moved here. But by engaging in this work and working on this chapter, I have been able to learn a lot about this city and what it has to offer and what Black people have offered to the city in multiple different realms, whether that be music, education. It's been really nice to see and be able to engage with the community, knowing that there are other people who are in similar positions as me, being an immigrant, coming from different backgrounds, different lineages, and being able to see that alive and well in Montreal. I've been able to feel like home, and it's the first time I felt like home since I've left my own country. like, you know, being Black, I think anything personally that I do adds to what is Black culture, whether, you know, that is playing rock and roll music or skateboarding or like doing art. I think anything that comes from the hands of Black people is going to be a part of our culture.
Do you want me to ask you another question?
I'm good.
No?
Okay. Hi, my name is Sherwin, and I'm the author of Chapter 2. Out of its authorized manpower of 1,049 volunteers, the battalion recruited 670 men, 346 of which were Canadian-born. Out of the 11 volunteers that enlisted in Montreal, only 2 were born and raised Montrealers, William Isaac Taylor and Robert A. Wildman. The 9 other soldiers had come from the British West Indies, Nigeria, the United States, and other Canadian provinces. This data is significant because it represents the demographics existing within Montreal's Black community. Its members came from different parts of the Black world. Personally, I feel like the project has really helped me grow as an artist and as a writer. I'm someone who comes from a very academic background in writing, so I've written a lot of papers, have an undergrad in history, so I had to learn a new way of writing, which is more of telling a story rather than stating facts and being argumentative. So I think in that way, I really explored my vulnerability through this project.
It's okay. It isn't not me being nervous. Hi, my name is Anne Victoria, and I did Chapter 3. It is said that the Black community of Montreal in the 1920s was the golden period of Montreal's Black history, bringing millions to the city. However, very little is said about the oppression experienced in the servitude labor market to which Black folk were relegated. A glass ceiling segregating the Canadian labor market, partly due to a rigid poor French-Canadian working class whose failed colonial efforts were still echoing. To avoid oversimplifying the 1920s, the impact of the Caribbean history, African American spirit, and freedom seekers will be highlighted. Together they help narrate the evolution of Canadian history, more specifically, Black Canadian history. This project affected my future endeavors in the way that I'm more invested in my community, and I see the growth that investing yourself in your community can have on yourself and the people around you. So in that way, I feel like it's changed my purpose, my trajectory, and the way I move through the world and the way I impact the world around me. I think people will have a different perspective of the city, of the presence of Black people in Canada and the impact they've actually had. Really, the Black history of Canada, I think that's definitely lacking, and I think this book will allow for that to be something that people can see and address. Yeah.
You look like you're gonna pass out.
I felt relaxed before, and now I'm like, oh my gosh. My name is Renee, and I'm doing Chapter 6. The need for the Black diaspora to have more inclusive places came as a result of not being accepted into white spaces. Many white nightclubs refused entrance for Black musicians and Black guests. This created the rise of nightclubs catered to the Black community in Montreal. Although Montreal has the allure of having a more tolerant society than other places, the fact that Black people were excluded from certain public spaces reinforced the idea of segregation. The growing popularity of nightclubs that hosted jazz musicians were not only representations of Blackness, but also a form of Black resistance against the status quo. The opportunities created from having these inclusive spaces not only help to create Black mobility, but also help to form a sense of identity and belonging. Being Black in 2022 is just embracing who you are, I would say. Yes, this has changed the way I view my own identity. I feel like growing up in Quebec and having a lot of family in Ontario, I never felt at home here. For From as young as I can remember, I always thought, I'm gonna get out of here as soon as possible. I always felt like I never belonged, but after doing some research and reading about all the people before us who've fought, who've really made their presence in Montreal, it really helped me to embrace the Black history here in Montreal. And so now I feel, whereas before I was more almost ashamed, I kind of just didn't know where I fit, especially as a second generation Jamaican Canadian, Canadian Jamaican. I'm not from Jamaica, I'm from here, but then I don't really fit in. So after seeing that, I felt that yes, my identity is definitely rooted, but also evolving.
Ayana stood up like, yes.
Right, that's what I'm here for. So I'll do the one of the ones that you picked, and then are we still doing two? Okay.
Organizing and unity. I've always admired and loved the diversity inside the university, but never have I experienced this diversity in the classroom. Throughout my university degree, I can count on one hand how many other Black faces sat in a classroom with me. I've dealt with issues of professors saying the N-word in class lectures on the 6th floor and feeling a sense of anxiety of not knowing how to deal with such a situation, being one of the few Black students in the classroom. But never have I made my way up to the 9th floor of the building until I sat down to write this chapter. The 9th floor of the Henry F. Hall building should be considered a historical landmark. It embodies the screams, the cries, and the courage of Black students and allies who fought for fairness in the school system and made international headlines echoing what they already knew about Canada and what they set out to change. The covert and overt racism that they've experienced firsthand, to which many gaslighted. How I felt being in Black in a predominantly white space. An example would be with the professor saying the N-word. I was one of the only few Black people in that classroom, and there wasn't really any other people of color in the classroom. So it was a very awkward, not knowing what to do type of thing. A win from that situation, I would say, would be actually speaking out and letting people know that this is actually harmful. The most difficult part of this project, I would say, was finding sources. And a lot of the information, I mean, it's out there, but it's kind of hidden, I would say. That's why I think it's so important for us to write this book, so that we're actually writing down our histories, because prior to that, it was kind of orally told, if that makes sense. So yeah, that was the hardest part, finding information.
It's done. You have only your question left, and then you're done. You're done.
My name is Joanna, and I'm doing the Chapter 8, A Change and Demography. The 1970s was an era of change and upheaval on the world stage. However, the previous decade was what truly gave way for the social movement that would ensue. The 1960s was popularized with the emergence of the civil rights movement and the women's liberation movement. However, with change came chaos. The 1960s were defined by a series of high-profile assassinations. They included the death of President John F. Kennedy, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, and civil rights activists Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Quebec followed suit. The start of the decade was marked by the October Crisis, a crazed chain of events that took place in Quebec in the fall of the 1970s. The crisis was the accumulation of a long series of terrorist attacks perpetrated by the Front de Liberation of Quebec. I wanted to join this project because I wanted to know more about the history of Black people here in Montreal, especially after the Black Lives Matter. I wanted to do a bit more, and when I saw this post on Facebook, I was like, this is a sign of God, and I would really want to join. So that's why I really wanted to join, and I've learned a lot from joining this project. Personally, I only have like a bachelor degree in literature, and I've never done history research, and that was something that was very, very interesting to me to do. So I think it really made me grow as an artist. I've learned a lot by doing this project on the Black history, on Montreal history, but also just on writing itself.
We're gonna have to start because I don't want to I don't want to So in order to respond to the challenges that they were facing from 1980 to 2000, Black Montrealers came together and organized. This chapter explores ways in which they did this by creating community organizations, educational funds, as well as social groups and events that elevated Black people and their culture. This chapter also explores roundtable discussions held by Black Montrealers in the early 1990s with the intent of building Black-led community organizations that would serve the community's various needs. The chapter starts by taking an in-depth look at the Montreal Jazz Festival and its origins. It examines how, despite jazz having lost popularity in the 1960s, it was able to bounce back when legendary Guyanese-born impresario Rue Doudou Boissel founded the Rising Sun Celebrity Jazz Club in 1975. Later, he would also launch the Rising Sun Festi Jazz at Place des Arts in 1978. Okay, so does social media hinder or help Black culture?
Yeah.
So for me, personally, as a Black person, I feel like social media has actually helped me grow. It helped me understand myself more. But it also taught me so much about Black people in other cultures. Like I was watching a show about Black Palestinians, actually not a show, but these Twitter conversations about Black Palestinians and Black Iranians. And these are East African people who were taken to Palestine and Iran in the 18 and 1700s during slavery. So for me, like I feel like as a Black person, social media has actually helped me grow, but also feel less alone. But there's also another side of social media that I feel like especially racist people somehow concentrate on. So the negative image of Black people that is sometimes shown on World Star, this whole social thing that used to be. And like for me, if you're going to take this negative image of Black people that's being shown on World Star or the Shade Room, for example, and then take it as the representation of Black people, then I just feel like you're an extremely unintelligent person, and you lack nuances, because there's black girl magic on social media. There's so many beautiful things that are being done by Black people on social media, and I don't think we should just concentrate on the negative.
Fanta Lee, Chapter 10, From 2000 to Present. At the turn of the millennium and the years that followed, societal debates on racial politics, paired with persistent mobilization, fueled a collective consciousness on the anti-Black racism embedded across all our institutions. Some spoke of racial reckoning, while others evoked a painful illusion of progress. Nonetheless, Black communities have and continue to reinvigorate and scale the praxis of Black solidarity. This chapter examines the continuing strategic mobilization of Black Montrealers through the nexus of local and international solidarity. From mobilization to litigation, the coalescence of various Black community organizations advocating for equal treatment has paved the way for the creation of legal clinics, including the Clinique Juridique Saint-Michel, spearheaded by Maître Fernando Belton, as well as the Clinique Juridique de Montréal-Nord by Maître Marie-Livia Bourget. While these clinics offer legal information Rather than legal representation, they fill an important and needed access to justice gap by informing those considering legal remedies of their rights and the adequate avenue and process to seek redress. Prior to the establishment of these clinics, the Center for Research Action on Race Relations, also known as CAR, has served as the primary community organization supporting Black litigants in matters of racial discrimination, profiling, and other breaches of rights protected under the Quebec Charter of Human Rights. These long-standing, as well as these nascent groups, have coalesced to organize a number of impactful joint initiatives, such as Know Your Rights campaigns and CAR rallies to denounce the persisting racial profiling. In addition, the establishment of court accompaniment programs to support youth navigating the justice system have proved to be impactful.
Proud of your answer. I know. You're just like, I did this so well.
Catch me off guard. Hello, my name is Ayana Manuma, and I am the youth animator on the BCRC book project. The project Where They Stood, a historical account of the evolution of Black Anglo-Montreal. The Black Community Resource Center's project Where They Stood, a historical account of the evolution of Black Anglo-Montreal, is an initiative created to engage English-speaking Black youth in the conception of a book detailing the history of Montreal's Black Anglo population. Writers were enlisted to, through a series of organized workshops, research, write, edit, publish, and digitize a book outlining the emergence and evolution of key community organizations created in response to the challenges associated with the settlement, development, and full participation of the English-speaking Blacks in Montreal. This work was designed to bolster community engagement and create an increased sense of belonging, all while educating our literary audience about a commonly unspoken history. We hope that through our efforts, we will effectively bring to light the story of a people so essential to the vitality and growth of our city like never before. Where They Stood reflects upon the unique experiences of Montreal's Black Anglophone migrants who immigrated on the promises of freedom, independence, and prosperity. Consequently, organizations such as the Colored Women's Club and the Union United Church were created to combat this hostility. Where They Stood not so long ago has allowed us to evolve and stand where we are today. Okay, so this position has taught me what collaborative work is. It has taught me that beyond the project, there are a network of people within the community that are always ready to help and uplift each of us. All we need to do is ask for help and build those bridges. So through this project, I have learned how to communicate, I've learned how to socialize, and I've learned how to network. This has not only opened doors for me, but it has allowed me to open doors for everyone else around me. I have very big aspirations for this project. I hope that a copy of this book, once it's published, can be found in every Canadian school and even beyond that. I hope that this book inspires not only Black youth, but all youth, all Canadian youth, to learn the history that occurred on the grounds where they stand today.
I will, but
okay.
I'm not supposed to write it.
Okay. All right. My name is Sarah DeMello-Zari, and I'm the project coordinator on the Where They Stood project. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our creative process. So Where They Stood, a historical account of the evolution of Black Anglo-Montreal, is designed to be a collaborative project that incorporates a diverse set of voices within a shared community. The team sought to engage and recruit Black English-speaking youth to author a book highlighting the important events and key figures that shaped Black Anglo-Montreal. Most importantly, we were looking for individuals who could inject their passion for the community, inspired by their personal experiences, into the project. Our collective comprises impassioned Concordia University and college graduates looking to write a widely unwritten history. With the assistance of BCRC's president, Dr. Clarence Bain, we've created a timeline from 1900 to 2020. This timeline was then separated into chapters and distributed amongst our writers. To support the youth in their journey to authorship, we contacted a slew of professors and community organizers and leaders to host virtual workshops on a variety of topics. We were successful in leading 15 workshops that ranged from the evolution of Little Burgundy, creative and critical writing, and art. In addition, Concordia's Special Collection Archives graciously invited our youth on multiple occasions to interact with material to support their writing and their process. Simultaneously, the youth have been sought out to participate in other initiatives, such as Fonts Magazine with Linda Leaf Publishing, the book launch of The Fire That Time, Transnational Black Radicalism and Sir George Williams' Occupation, and Take a Moment. What we hope to accomplish with the project. So as previously mentioned, this project is a collaborative effort not only between our group of youth, but the Black English-speaking community. By completing this project, we hope to unite a community often forgotten. We hope to shine a light and celebrate a history unknown to most, and most importantly, we want to provide the future generations of youth with the inspiration to pursue further insight on the lives of the people who stood where they stand.
For me, I was going to say my relationship to the planet. I think it's something where, you know, I acknowledge that it's my home and I feel like great gratitude towards it. Like I'm thankful that we have like a planet, and the older I've gotten, the more I've realized like how important it is to take care of our planet. It's our home, and, you know, just seeing how things have been changing a lot really makes me appreciate, you know, the nature. I wasn't like a nature person before, or like a plant person, but as I start to get older, I start to really like appreciate it, you know that like the trees are living, you know, sometimes it has healing properties. Sometimes you can just go out into the grass barefoot and just stand and just be in nature, and it feels really nice. So it's got like a healing property to it. And there's something special about it, something to respect.
Names and pronouns. So my name is Mitchell, he, him. I'm from Montreal. I grew up a little bit in the Sud-West, a little bit in Ahuntsic, a little bit in Pierrefonds, and now I live in the Sud-West again. So yeah, so what I'd like to get out of this workshop is just helping all of you feel like you got something from this workshop. That's what's important to me today. And then something interesting about myself, I'm a terrible dishwasher. As you can see, this is what happened. I was washing a glass and I put the sponge in to make sure the bottom of the glass was clean, and I broke it and cut my hand up. So that's about as interesting as I am today, but I'd love to hear about you, everyone.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that it did. It produced these long-standing relationships with individuals, you know, people that you get to know in a particular setting. And I don't remember, I had a boyfriend at one point, and there was this young lady that was part of the process. She was going to her graduation, and that's now when we were at Sir George Williams University. And when we were there, and she felt free enough to say, can you let him go with me? Yes. Exactly, because she was ahead of me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I said, sure.
That's a big favor.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is, and I'm saying these things are interesting because it speaks to the nature of relationships at the time. And she was a friend. She was in a foster home situation. Brilliant girl. She also played, and the thing is, she played basketball with me on the Sir George Williams University team. And so relationships hook like that. We had a good relationship. And she asked, and I said, sure. And he took her to her graduation. And then there was again a cultural thing happening at the Ukrainian Hall or something. There's a place that we did a lot of activities. And when he was finished, he took her home or whatever, and then he came and met me there because there was one of these events that we were always involved in, some kind of a fundraising, some activity for something, and he came thereafter.
It gives off the sense that the community was so much tighter than what it is now, right?
It's different. It was different, right? And I was living in NDG, which was considered totally different than how it is now in terms of the mix, And then most of the people that were there were living in Little Burgundy, and that area. But it brought people together in that kind of way. Because if you wanted to have a cultural experience in the sense, you're not going to find it necessarily in NDG in those early years, right? It would center around the UNIA Hall, the NCC, Union United Church, and not because you're a member of Union United Church, but because that was also a cultural center in that sense of certain things.
According to the ancient Greek definition, a poem is something that is made. That's it. That's the definition. And I love that definition because it doesn't exclude anything. So according to this definition, a dance can be a poem, a picture, a painting can be a poem, a sculpture is a poem, a haircut, if you're that good, is a poem. So anything artistic that is created can be considered a poem. And I love that aspect of things because it's very inclusive and it allows for people to get in where they fit in. And it's not prescriptive in the way that a lot of us may have learned about poetry from someone in a corduroy jacket with suede patches on their sleeve and or from a dusty book at McGill. So for me, this definition is also alive and allows for change. Personally, a poem is best when it is brief but spectacular. And if any of you are familiar with the brief but spectacular pieces, I'm going to show you one.
We should be able to share it with and at least point out children to say, go read up about this because this was taking place. You see, how are they going to know? So we weren't training people to take over. So when you sit there too long, nobody else has the information. So you become a continuous source and a reference to say for things. Because the youth doesn't have it. And then some people will say, who are these young upstarts that want to come and think that they got an opinion based on what they know and the reality and their reality and their truth that they're living right now. How else are they going to react but in the reality that they're living right now with the information that they have, because they have not been impacted by some of the things because they don't even know that they exist. But does that mean that they shouldn't have a voice? Yeah, you need to take that voice and feed it, inform it, you see, train it. Yeah, get into positions and always looking to say, I want to train my replacement. See yourself as moving out.
They're wrought. They're just wrought with traps. It's very fraught, is what I'm trying to say. And there's a level of self-policing that has to happen.
If I could add on that, just because it really reminded me, this was like a moment in my life where I really was like, am I doing this to myself? But I had gone out and this girl, she was white, she goes, blah, 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 she's talking. She's like, because we're all like, she's like, on est toutes Québécoises ici. And I literally looked around and I said, me being born here and everything. She's like, yeah, like you're born here And then I realized that like, as much as also like the outside world is doing it to me, I also am doing it to myself, where I'm also telling myself I don't belong when I do, which is like also I feel like another thing I personally at least had to like manage for myself, and actually kind of like what she said, like I can't get away from the fact that I am also from here, while also like I do struggle with the fact that I am from here because I also feel like I'm not. So.
Yeah, and that is a very, that is a very common sentiment, really. Last question before I show you guys some, we get back into some more contemporary art. I'm curious to know how many of you have had a Black professor or a Black teaching assistant in your classes so far?
I've never had a Black professor, never had a Black teaching assistant, and I've also never been in a class with another Black person.
Another Black person?
Yeah, since I've been in Canada, I've never been in class with another Black person because I finished high school here, went to university, never seen another one. I see them in the hallways, but not in class.
What did you study?
Yeah.
I was just gonna, actually, I'm just gonna ask if all of you, if Zach, you start, what is your field of study?
I study anthropology, or I did study anthropology. And I studied at both University of Regina and at the Simon Fraser University.
Have another person to share? Hello.
Hey, I'm just gonna share my screen. Oh my gosh, okay, this is so new to me. I feel like my mom. Okay. Here. Oh, okay, we're good. So this is art from a friend of mine, David. He recently passed away, unfortunately, but he was really, really, really talented. So this piece here is called Hidden Figures, and he made this out of coffee to expose, what was it? The slave trade in colonial Brazil, was it, I believe, of the coffee market. And David was also gay, so his artwork always like had like Black people at the forefront. So this was his take on Black love. I just find it so beautiful. And yeah.
Event, then you're going to miss out the entire background of what led to that event, right?
Yeah, and I would just add on that, because even like as you're mentioning like commissions, I think that's really helpful, because I really want to do like look at like the nexus between the local and the international. And in the 2000s, there's a lot of engagement with like I know most recently there's like the UN Decade on People of African Descent, but the UN Special Rapporteur on like the elimination of racial discrimination had done a visit to Canada a few years ago also, and met with Black organizations. So I guess I could use that.
Yeah, definitely. And you also need to look at like connections, right? Because it's like, so sometimes connections are not the ones we think about it. So if you look in, again, like late 60s, there were a lot of connections between student groups. Again, like honestly, I'm still discovering the connections between different Caribbean left groups. And these guys were organized, they traveled back and forth, they knew each other. And so that's why this is why Robin Kelley is really interesting, because it's like sometimes what brings Black folks together is their shared Black identity. And sometimes it's also on different bases. And so that's why I say it's like, if I look at all these Caribbean lefty, what brought them together was their belonging to the communist parties of their home countries. You know what I mean?
I came to Canada in 1955 and got married in June, and got married in 1960 September. I lived in the McGill ghetto, and that's where the germs of the creation of the Trinidad and Tobago Association started. And it didn't start simply because somebody said, let's start a Trinidad and Tobago Association. These are a bunch of guys here in a basement on Lawn Avenue, drinking, blagging, and plotting how to start an association. Right? There I am in the center there. There's Adagota who's dead right now. There's Perriman who's now dead. There's, that's what we were drinking at Christmas time and planning how to start an association because we didn't like the fact that that we never heard anything or not any music or anything whatsoever, or saw any cultural activity to which we could relate.
But I'm an eternal optimist. I see that there is a lot of progress. I mean, like our male and female children are not bound to the railroad anymore. They are all over the place like salt and pepper. They're all everywhere. And they have been able to take advantage of post-secondary education, and they've advanced in many areas. I mean, like there's a professor at McGill right now in the law faculty, and her parents came to Canada. Her mother was a domestic worker, and then she worked in the hospitals, and then her daughter is now a professor, full professor at McGill. Juanita Westmoreland became a judge, and there's so many people that have advanced. Jean Augustine came here on the domestic scheme, but she was a teacher in Grenada, and she eventually bolstered her credentials and became a school teacher. Then she became a school principal, and then she went into politics and became first Black female member of parliament, and then became a minister. So there's so much progress all around, and there's so much acknowledgement of our presence now that I still see discrimination. I'm not trying to say it no longer exists, but I am saying, like Maya Angelou, and still we rise. Yeah, I know you're
happy to talk about. Those are the things where
You guys are too modest. If I wrote a book, I would be like, okay, so I want you to ask me about my outline, the characters, how I felt when I wrote it, who was annoying throughout the process, who was helpful. Did it change me as a person? Or maybe I need to write a book too now, but
yeah, maybe.
Yes.
That was a long chapter too. Thanks for reading it.
Oh, no worries. I actually read the whole book and I thought it was really well written. I'm really excited to have this conversation because there's a lot of people that are involved in this chat that I'm curious to hear like their thoughts in real time. So
We're just so happy that this is happening and that we get to, there's